So, hi, Amy. It's a pleasure
Hi,
to have
Miguel.
you. It's good to have you at Kingpins 24 Latam. And we're going to talk about greenwashing. So you know about greenwashing and you have experience with greenwashing. And we're going to ask you 3 questions. And let's see, what are your insights? What do you think about it? So my first
Sure.
question for you is, what is the meaning? What is greenwashing? The definition of greenwashing for you as a designer?
So I think it is an industry-wide let's say misplaced intention, I guess. I think, there are definitely companies out there, say if we think about companies who are talking direct to consumer, brands who are talking direct to consumer, I do think sometimes that can be quite, intentionally misleading. But I also think that in our industry, there's a lot of well-intentioned people who are trying to communicate something that's very complex and they don't even understand themselves at times in a simple, straightforward way that they think their customer, be that a brand or the end customer, can understand. And I think that's maybe where a lot of greenwashing has originated. I mean, if you think about way back in the day when, I don't know, the first thing everyone was talking about was like, organic cotton. And it's funny because at that point I was at WGSN and we used to laugh because every time there'd be a sustainable or organic range or fabric or quality, you'd have like a cardboard hang tag, and a string cord, and that was like, oh, and then some green printing, and it was like, here's our, and I think that it comes from communication. It comes from trying to communicate something to somebody else using terminology that they might understand with an area that is new to everybody and is very complex and very hard to trace and track. So I think that I mean, to me, that's where the origins come from. I think that now, I'm being kind, there are definitely a lot of well-intentioned people in our industry, and miscommunication and confusion can happen. I guess there is the other side to this, where big corporations are just using greenwashing or sustainability as a trend in order to sell more. And I think, as someone who's worked in the trend forecasting industry, that for a long time, it's interesting because, 20 years ago, fashion trend was just purely about silhouette and color and wash. Yes. And now, today, in especially post-pandemic world, trend has become, like how we show off to each other is sometimes about our values and what we believe in and social justice and politics and all kinds of stuff. And so brands are tapping into that and tapping into, what is cool now. It's cool to be sustainable. And that's where it's getting really dangerous, I think.
Yeah, I think, playing with words without definition is very, very, very risky. Okay. So if you say something, must be a good definition behind it. Otherwise it can be misunderstood. What is the effect for you that greenwashing is causing on fashion denim business industry?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's obviously the number one thing. The word that comes up all the time is confusion. I think, it's confusing for the designer, it's confusing for the brand, it's confusing for the end consumer. It's confusing for the supply chain as well, because,
very much.
Mills are buying fibers. It's, it's a very confusing field, a minefield of information. And I think never before has, say if I'm, from a design perspective, a designer, never before have you needed more expertise in an area that you know very little or nothing about. And yet, the buck stops at you. You have to take responsibility. And then, of course, the designer has never had such little time to do their job as right now. The job of a designer, say 50 years ago and 60 years ago, all of us, in all jobs, life was simpler. People wrote letters, everything went slower, and now everything's so fast, and time is so precious and so limited. So a designer is needing to deliver so much and understand so much and be an expert on so many aspects,
yes,
in order to do their job. And I can't remember what the question is now. I think I've digressed.
No problem. Actually, you described very well. I mean, it was about what the effect, the damage that greenwashing is causing to that, but you expressed that quite well. Yeah.
I think that's it. It's like that. The issue is that now someone whose expertise was, to go to design school and understand pocket placement and pattern cutting and fabric drape, and obviously in the denim world, maybe, wash and laundry. Suddenly there are so many elements that are coming in that I think all designers, I think if you're creative, you're naturally curious, and most designers, I think, are quite inquisitive creatures. So I don't know many designers who don't want to be as sustainable as possible. And it's so confusing for them. They're so well-intentioned and they want to do the right thing, but it's confusing and they don't know, and they're not that expert. So and then they're having to rely on listening to the supply chain to educate them, and that's another tricky issue.
I mean, we have a saying in Spanish, in English it's the same, that the hell is paved of good intentions. Okay, so
there you go. That's it.
Hi, Frankie. Good day to you.
Hi, Miguel.
Hi, Frankie is a very good colleague, a good friend of mine, actually. And he has a long experience with brands, okay? You can figure out the biggest brand of all. Okay, Frankie was there. We are going to talk about greenwashing, right?
Cool.
Okay, so Frankie, first of all, welcome. And thank you very much for setting some time for us today. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Always welcome.
So, okay, the first question is about what is the meaning of greenwashing for brands or the companies that promote articles to end consumers?
I think the meaning is or how they understand it is pretty broad. I mean, it's all about spreading fake sustainable claims through a lot of that happens, of course, through marketing communications, and it is really to make positive media attention in the first place, but as well to mislead the consumer. This can be unreal facts, can be unreal figures, wrong calculations. It can be like, okay, adopting minimum sustainable technologies, then spreading a marketing good news show, but the impact on the business is really, really minimum. And this is a good reason as well to speak about greenwashing, because they do it, but it has no impact. It's just to move towards that positive media attention, and this is what they want. It can be as well through taking away the attention from the media. I know some guys who are sponsoring some social initiatives, just to hide the real facts. And this is taking away the attention from the media. And again, people think like, oh, well, that's great, what those guys are doing. But on the other hand, it's all hidden facts. Can be about misleading claims as well, abuse, forced labor, ethical behavior which is not right, and this is hiding sometimes the real facts of the supply chains, and this is yeah, I think one of the worst things as well that that can happen.
Yes.
Why they do it sometimes as well is to in many cases they want to rebrand themselves. Yeah, they want to rebrand themselves as a sustainable brand, as a sustainable retailer. Yeah,
Yes.
and this, of course, happens through false advertising, to misleading claims, using a lot of vague language. Yeah, language and words that only drives towards confusion. Yeah, and this is, of course, the power of PR. They play an enormous big role into that whole. That whole problem of greenwashing. So yeah, that's a bit the understanding, I think, of how we have to see greenwashing into the industry.
Yeah, perfect. You touch a point mentioning that the companies that are using greenwashing they don't have any impact. But what is the impact? The other way around. What is the impact of greenwashing on the industry? Okay. What is the, how is greenwashing affecting our industry?
It is very bad, and let's be honest, we all know it has a huge impact. Yeah, a huge impact on the credibility of the industry. The fashion industry, the denim industry, well, whatever. It doesn't have such a good name. It's suffering already. Yeah, in some cases. So absolutely, that doesn't help. Yeah. Doing those kind of practices of greenwashing, it blocks the implementation of solutions. Yeah, all those innovative, sustainable technologies that are already out there. It is very frustrating sometimes as an expert to see that this doesn't happen. Yeah, and it happens in all different areas, whether it is chemistry, machinery, fibers, fabrics, yarns, application technologies. It really happens in all those areas, and that's a pity. That's a pity. I have the impression sometimes that greenwashing becomes a bit of the normal. Yeah, it's so widespread, and yeah, I don't know. I have the impression that we're moving sometimes a bit backwards than forwards. Yeah, just because of that, and that's very bad. Yeah. It's creating a lot of confusion as well with the consumer. They don't know more what to believe, who they have to believe. Yeah. Sometimes they go to the websites of a brand, but they find very vague information again. So, and then in the media they hear and they see other things. So yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult for the consumer, and I would even say it's impossible for the consumer with the information that is out there to know if one of the brands or one of the retailers are doing the right things.
Yes.
I think moving forward, it's really the buyers and the brands that have to take the responsibility. I mean, they are fully responsible for the final product that they make. Yeah, yes, how it's designed, how it's produced, and those days even beyond. Yeah, the end of life of the product becomes really, really important. Yeah, they decide and influence what's available in the stores. Yeah, yes. And what the consumer will buy at the end. It's not the other way around. So they can influence. Yeah? They have the power towards their supply chain, how it's made, where it's made, and how it's produced. So they must take the responsibility, implement conscious raw materials to start with, chemistry, and using all those sustainable technologies. That would be a big, big step forward, I think. Yeah. And I always asking myself, I mean, how fair is it that brands, they receive all those sometimes sustainable products and marketing tools from those production facilities, from the mills, while all the efforts and the investments are done by the manufacturers? Is that fair? You know?
Frank, yeah,
let's be honest, we all have the same targets. Yeah, we all have the same mission, and so I think the investments should be a bit shared. Yeah.
Estamos com Thaisa Peralta, da Covolan, no Brasil. Olá, Thaisa, para falar um pouquinho de greenwashing. Olá, Thaisa, como vai tudo?
Oi, Miguel, tudo bem? Bom, estamos bem e muito animados para poder falar desse tema que é tão importante. Quero agradecer a oportunidade de estarmos fazendo parte e conectados com vocês. É sempre um prazer, uma satisfação muito grande para nós.
Vamos a falar um pouco sobre greenwashing, ok? Há três perguntas que gostaria de fazer sobre greenwashing. A primeira é: qual é a definição do greenwashing para você? Para você como fabricante do denim, ok?
Ok. Bom, eu até gostaria de ir um pouquinho além do greenwashing, do conceito do greenwashing, que a gente sabe que é aquela lavação das informações erradas, errôneas, né, que não são fidedignas. Para nós acreditamos que o greenwashing, ele é um crime. Se falarmos hoje que a informação correta, né, que está lá, que as empresas estão colocando, ou a informação incorreta, ela conduz as pessoas a tomadas de decisões equivocadas, é um crime, e leva clientes e empresas a confiar em algo que não é verdadeiro. Os clientes, eles vão usar um produto achando que ele não é contaminante, que ele não é tóxico e que não polui rios e lagos, quando, na verdade, né, ele é totalmente poluente, não apenas aos rios, mas ao solo, ao ar, e vem aí contaminando também os seres humanos. E tudo isso, para nós, é um crime, sim. Um produto que não é verdadeiro e ele pode contaminar rios, toxicar pessoas, e é nessa analogia, então, que a gente considera o greenwashing um crime.
Sim, uma boa definição. Boa definição. Segunda pergunta é: como está o greenwashing afetando a indústria da moda, do denim? O impacto do greenwashing no setor?
Bom, ela afeta cada minuto que ela persevera, né? Isso acaba criando, obviamente, uma concorrência muito desleal, porque aqueles que são ambientalmente sustentáveis, que trabalham para estar diminuindo os impactos ambientais e que têm, né, e tiveram seus investimentos em prol da sustentabilidade, eles possuem buços muito diferentes daqueles que não têm, né? E as pessoas, elas estão sendo enganadas nos seus relacionamentos comerciais. Os profissionais do denim e fashion, né, da moda, eles compram algo achando que é uma coisa, quando na verdade é outra. Eles pensam que é seguro, que atende o uso de substâncias restritas e não atende. Então, entendemos que isso afeta a cadeia do denim do fashion como um todo. A partir do momento que você compra algo achando que ele é correto, você não engana apenas a indústria, a empresa do denim, mas toda uma cadeia de fornecimento, inclusive, né, o consumidor final. E, claro, acaba afetando em um raio de alcance muito maior do que se imagina. Então, é muito sério.
Sim, realmente. Depois, a terceira pergunta é: o que as empresas responsáveis, ok, fabricantes do denim, podem fazer para neutralizar, para prevenir o greenwashing, na sua opinião?
Tá. Bom, tem algumas ações, mas dentro delas a gente tem que começar dividindo em duas etapas: a cadeia de produção e a cadeia de comércio. A cadeia produtiva do denim, ela precisa atuar de uma maneira que a cadeia de comercialização já receba o produto correto. E logo, então, começa, né, ali conosco, dentro do processo produtivo, produzirmos, obviamente, produtos de uma forma adequada para que o consumidor final ele receba esse produto dentro aí dos requisitos. As empresas que estão engajadas dentro desse propósito, obviamente elas vão receber o produto adequado. E até o que a gente estava conversando um pouquinho antes, né? A gente acredita muito, né, em ter uma lista positiva de fornecedores sustentáveis, que não sejam apenas que não seja apenas de coisas que não são comprobatórias, né? Mas que sim, onde vocês podem estar encontrando empresas confiáveis e que não praticam o greenwashing. Ou seja, empresas que possamos trabalhar e com essas empresas, né, identificar aquelas que atuam de uma forma sustentável para estar diminuindo os seus impactos ambientais. E não é uma atuação apenas, né, entendemos, só da indústria do denim, né? Entendemos que também, para a gente neutralizar o greenwashing, precisamos estar atuando coletivamente na disseminação da informação sobre esse tema, onde todos precisam estar envolvidos para estar atuando honestamente, para estar valorizando o produto, conscientizando o consumidor, entendendo que não é um resultado imediato, que precisamos cada vez mais fortalecer as nossas comunicações em relação da sustentabilidade, porque a grande verdade é que nós não podemos continuar com essa desculpa, né, na apologia do preço para determinação da escolha de produto da coleção. E aqui nós já estamos observando, né, várias mudanças do consumidor nesse sentido, que já vem entendendo e buscando a verdade daquilo que ele está comprando e como ele está comprando. Então, nós acreditamos muito também na força da comunicação e cada vez mais falar muito mais sobre esse tema, até porque nós somos consumidores, né?
Sim. Verdade, verdade. Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure for Kingpins 24 to welcome Shannon Welch. She's the Director of Strategic Initiatives and Create Partnerships for Fashion Revolution in the USA. So hi, Shannon, how are you?
Hi, good. I also wanted to add on there, as I was just saying, so obviously my work with Fashion Revolution is a huge pride of mine, but my other full-time job is I work in public relations, representing different sustainable manufacturers and whatnot. So coming at this from a couple of different perspectives.
All your insights are more than welcome. Thanks, Shannon. So let's talk a little bit about greenwashing, okay? The hot topic these days. What is the meaning? What is, from the brand or public relations point of view, what is greenwashing?
I mean, it's kind of like fluffing the good that you're doing in terms of environmental. Mostly, I think green is, aimed towards the environmental side of things, but also the social impact side of things. So it's just a bit misleading and fluffing kind of what you already are doing to appeal more to conscious consumers.
Yes. Okay, that was good. I like the word fluffy. I will use it. Okay. So Shannon, what is the impact that greenwashing is having on our industry?
Yeah, so that's hard to quantify, obviously, but I think that let's start maybe, I don't know if I would say this is a positive way, but talking about sustainability and having all of this in marketing messages and advertisements, consumers are aware about the negative impacts of making clothing and the negative impacts it has on the environment. So you have that growing awareness that I think could maybe be viewed as a positive. However, when you're falsifying claims, you're obviously misleading the consumer, and then you can really undermine a lot of the good work that is being done, because then consumers will be even more cautious of any sort of positive environmental claims. So it's really a catch-22 there, building awareness generally, but then losing that lack of confidence and consumers that maybe know a little bit more. So always being cautious and maybe not believing everything.
That's a very good point. Consumers losing confidence on the industry, on the messages, because one company is claiming something, and then all of the other companies that are doing things right are affected by that. So it's one causes a kind of domino effect. So one bad is causing a domino effect.
Exactly. And then it's also kind of, I'm sure there's, other companies that are doing good things, but they're too afraid to say anything because they're afraid of potential NGOs or specifically customers knowing their power with social media, of calling them out for not being completely truthful. So there's, this transparency that we want, but then the hesitancy for them to talk about it. So it's really nuanced. It's really difficult.
That's a good point. I mean, do you think that good companies are hiding information just because they're afraid to say anything?
I think so. I think there still are some players, especially if you want to look more in sort of the luxury side of things. They still have such proprietary, supply chain lines. So they're really not talking about anything and not being very transparent about anything, even though they could be doing really amazing things. And I think throughout the industry, we hear about certain brands like, oh, they're doing this, but there's like absolutely zero information, public information about it. So I still think that is something that brands are afraid of.
That's very sad. I mean, you're doing something right, but you're scared of claiming anything because someone may go and say, no, this is wrong, and create a problem where it doesn't exist. So you stay on the passive side. Okay, you say,
right.
We don't say anything and everybody's happy. That's
right. Right. Which is, part of what we do at Fashion Revolution is the Fashion Transparency Index, grading brands, so to say, on how much information is disclosed, not necessarily on exactly what they're doing, but what they are disclosing. So it can be a negative effect, obviously, for brands that are too afraid to say that, even though we're talking about like to be transparent, own up to it. If something's not right, then figure that out and address it. But if you're too afraid to in the first place, because there have been instances of a lot of call outs, a lot of canceling, and I get that. But at Fashion Revolution, that's not something that we are trying to do. So we want to work within and with outside the industry and trying to push everyone to move forward.
That's very, very, very interesting insight. Companies are afraid of speak up or saying something just because you don't know what's going to happen. That's so sad. Well, so in your opinion, what can NGOs or communication, taking advantage of that you have a wider view on things, what can NGOs and communication companies, people that are releasing messages to the end consumers, what can they do to neutralize first and then prevent greenwashing?
Right. I mean, I think, I went back to kind of being as transparent as possible, like understanding no one is perfect. There's no such thing as a sustainable brand. So understanding where, your strengths and weaknesses are and lay it bare, I think is super, super important. Obviously, like I said, what we do with the Transparency Index, but also a huge, huge part, I think that a lot of the industry is coming towards is we need regulation. So I'm sure you're familiar with the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC in the USA, the green guides, which haven't been updated since 2012. So that is something that there's a lot of chatter going on in the NGO community and something we really want to get behind and push as soon as a bill is actually introduced. So that I think is the main thing that from our perspective, we want to get regulation. We want to make sure regulation and then enforcement, there are already guides out there saying you can't use this term green or eco, yet there's no one going after anyone saying this is false advertising, except for maybe in the case of like Allbirds at this point, they're being called out and quite heavily and being sued. And you're like, they're actually doing pretty good. Like, let's focus on the people that are not doing anything. But I think that's where it really comes down to is legislation and holding brands accountable and holding marketers accountable.
Let me ask you one additional question, taking advantage of that you are an expert. Let's say when you have to write a PR, okay, with communications about this and that, are you, or how are critical with the information that you have to write about?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's really coming down to specifics. I try never to use the word sustainable because what exactly does it mean? What is sustainable about like this process or your new manufacturing plant? Like what exactly are you, using water recycling? Are you Blue Sign approved? Are you making sure you're only using good chemistry? Are you reducing your carbon footprint using solar power, solar panels? Planting mangroves, all of these things. So I try to be extremely specific in how this is positive for the environment, positive for the workers. I always want to make sure that, one is not outweighing the other because the social impact and the human rights impact goes hand in hand with the environmental impact. So being as specific as possible is really how I try to communicate things. But it's hard because the people are finally kind of understanding sustainability. So you have to kind of use that at first and like, okay, and bullet point, here's how it's sustainable, because we don't want to throw out too many new terminology to consumers to right off the bat. But when I'm speaking with like the trade journalists that are really focused on sustainability, the vocabulary is there, so I can be very, very specific.
That's true, Shannon. Sometimes I think that the companies or even ourselves, we spend more time trying to find a new word. Okay, how can we describe than doing something good? I mean, how can we call it that? Let's call it fit for the future, or let's call it stress, environmental reduce stress. This is bullshit. Instead of thinking that all that, just do something.
Yes, yeah, and I completely get the need for very specific terminology, but when and that's more of like a business sort of conversation. But when you're talking to consumers, which I feel like this is where greenwashing is aimed at, you can't use too much jargon. So that's why the sustainable umbrella term is being co-opted quite a lot. So it's hard because you have to be like, as a marketer or an NGO, let's say from this perspective, do your homework, learn more. But
exactly.
At the end of the day, we're all kind of lazy and we just feel like, just tell me where I can shop and where I can't shop. So
come on. Well, it's not about words, it's about actions. Okay.
You said it well. It's not about words, it's about action. So
exactly. So Amy, may I ask you to end your participation with a sentence, with a message to all our viewers, something that you want to communicate to them, strong.
Okay. Right, so let's see how good I am. I'm a waffler, so I'll be like, I'll start strong and then it'll be like petering out for 2 minutes. But I think, honestly, what I just said sort of resonates. I think that creative people, I can only speak for us creatives. I think a lot of my friends who are in the industry, who are creative and passionate and love denim, want to do better. They want to create the most sustainable jean, they really do. And the lowest impact ever. And I think the only way that we can all do this as an industry is through honesty and trying our best to be able to sleep at night. Like every day that we show up to work, go to bed thinking, I did my best to make the future more sustainable. And I think honesty and scruples are the two things that I guess I would take away. The major takeaways for me is just like, are you okay with how you communicated today? Are you okay with how much you did, how much you push your employers to be better in all aspects? And then honesty, if it isn't perfect, that's okay. I think we've got to the point with sustainability that we know just buying organic denim isn't the answer and that's it. And then, has it got a string hang tag and a brown cardboard label? We now know that is not enough. So, it's just, I think it's really about being honest and saying we've not got there, but this is what we have done and this is what we intend to do. So I think, honesty and scruples. And if we all do that, we all move towards something better. We may not actually get there, but we'll at least move towards something better.
Well, there are two things you said that could be a good takeaways for our viewers. One is that when you go to bed at night, think about what you have done during the day. And have you done something positive for the environment? Have you done something better for the people? That's okay.
Yeah. And have you pushed the needle? Yeah.
push the needle. So that's the first thing, what you do yourself, okay? And then collaboration and everything, this is absolutely important because we cannot solve these kind of problems, one by one. We need to work all together. It's the only way.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Amy, thanks very much for your participation. Thanks. And looking forward to have you again on a live Kingpins, probably next year in April, okay?
Yes, hopefully, right?
Hopefully, let's keep crossing.
See you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Amy. Perfect. Thank
Thanks.
you. Okay, bye. What would you say to the audience?
I would say that we all have the same mission. It's not 5 to 12, it's already 12:15. And we have to take care of our next generation. There's so much nasty stuff going on, but there is so much good stuff already out there. And please, guys, let's implement it and let's move forward in every segment, whether it is on the yarns and the fibers, whether it is on the chemistry, on the technologies, application technologies, whatever. Let's all move forward in the industry. And I would like to see as well a bit more strict regulations from the United Nations, from the European Union, or in the US to really try to tackle those bad practices, because this is holding everything. Greenwashing is really holding everything to move forward. And we all have the same mission. Let's all do that.
That's great message. So Frankie, thanks very much for your insights today on Greenwashing. And thanks again for saving time for this short interview. And again, looking forward to meeting you again sometime soon. Let's go for it. Okay. Okay, Frankie. All the best. Thank you. Mensagem que você pensa que é importante para a audiência, para o público.
Bom, na Convolan a gente sempre vem incentivando, né, a todas as pessoas com quem a gente vem se relacionando e tendo contato, para que faça o papel de investigador, para que busque as informações entrando nos links do site, né? Hoje a gente tem essas informações colocadas de uma forma muito transparente e acessível. Então, vá atrás dessa informação, verifique de fato se aquela empresa, quando ela publica que ela tem o selo de um certificado, que ela faz parte de um programa da sustentabilidade, se de fato é comprobatório, né? Verifica e pergunte mais como é feito, né? Se tem uma estação de tratamento de efluentes adequadas, para onde vai o descarte, para onde vai o lodo biológico, qual é o produto químico utilizado. Então, incentivamos hoje os profissionais do jeans a irem atrás dessas informações para fidelizar se de fato aquilo é verdadeiro. Então, quando até tem, né, uma dica, né, os selos dos certificados, se você entrar para verificar tanto do Oecotex ou da própria família do ISO, do ZDHC, do Ring Index e de tantos outros que nós temos, vocês entram no site, entram em contato com eles e podem perguntar e verificar. Então, essa é uma dica que nós damos, que a gente acredita que é muito importante para todos os profissionais da área que estão envolvidos.
É um conselho muito importante, de sempre fazer uma pesquisa, perguntar. Né?
Sim, sim. Ir atrás mesmo, fidelizar mesmo, fazer o processo de investigador.
Perfeito. Bom, fantástico, beleza, tudo perfeito. Para nós estamos muito obrigados pela gentil participação, e os valiosos comentários que você fez hoje. Para mim, um prazer. Não sei, até a próxima, Thaisa.
Obrigada. Obrigada, Miguel. Para nós é um prazer muito grande. Eu tentei realmente fazer respostas mais objetivas, até para captar mesmo ali a essência. Muito obrigada pela oportunidade.
Tudo perfeito, Thaisa. Muito obrigado. Até a próxima.
Até.
Tchau. Obrigado. Tchau. Shannon, now, if you want to pass a message to our audience on greenwashing, you want to say something, advise on something, just okay. All the mic, all the screen, everything is yours now. Let's go ahead.
Okay. Wow. Okay. The stage is mine. I mean, I think at the end of the day, and as I was just trying to say before, the final message is like, you can't believe everything. And that's really, really hard. And I think consumers are becoming more savvy, especially with, you know, the internet age. Like we have all the information at our fingertips. So you can't just blindly purchase. And also I think that like, for brands to be talking about their sustainability initiatives and their impact and all of this, what they're really talking about is the impact at their manufacturers and at their mill level and whatnot, which I don't think is communicated as much. It's not XYZ brand reducing water usage. It's XYZ brands manufacturer, dyeing facility that are reducing the impact. So I think that to kind of get away from this blanketed greenwashing from the brand perspective, I think they should be talking more about their supply chain and their partners in that system. And then that kind of like opens up, you know, the conversation about all of that shared risk. Like it's not just a brand, the brands are working with these manufacturers. They're the ones on the ground really, I think, making the positive impacts. So I would love for that to be more transparent with brands. Let's show your good manufacturing partners, and you know, the education with the consumer will then come that way. And then, you know, 100%. trusted brands because they're working with this great manufacturer and so forth.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I mean, it's the customers know what to ask and the brands are ready to answer. That will be the perfect scenario, right?
Right.
Well, so Shannon, thanks very much for your the time that you share with us today. Thanks for your comments. Very extremely interesting, very valuable.
Thank you.
Okay, Shannon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, all the best, Shannon. Okay, bye.